Hey, this is Angela with this week's Living the Shift. So as we move forward, things are changing so dramatically and so quickly that we are shifting from one organization into a new organization and having to release everything all sort of at once and create a new ground, lose the old ground, create a new one as we're going. And I know so many people are feeling this right now, and they're just sort of in this tizzy of saying, what do I do and how do I deal with this? And what causes more friction is when we set these expectations or insist on keeping the boxes of the old forms, the old formulas that served us in the past as we moved into the future, not realizing that most of those old boxes and formulas don't work for us anymore. And that's happening very quickly. I mean, really, really quickly. So what we're going to talk about this week is how to just start realizing it's time for us to let go of these old boxes, the way things have been before, how we refer things to how things were before as we move forward. Because many times we don't realize what we're doing. You know, when we make decisions, we say, okay, well, that hasn't worked for me before, or this worked out badly for me before, or blah, 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 before, right? And this is something that's so automatic in us, we don't even realize we're doing it consciously. That's the ego, okay? The ego starts to try to think things out based on, and I go back all the time to this pawn being a pawn on a playing board, and being able to see what's right in front of it, right behind it, right on each side, what the other pawns right around it are doing. And that's how it makes this decision moving forward. Where the higher self is what can see that whole playing board and say, yeah, you might think so, because before that didn't work, but this is slightly different, and so we need to change this way. So that's the key in moving forward, looking at things differently and releasing those expectations of the past. How many people I have worked with, how many of my sessions I've talked, and in many of my sessions I've talked about that, where I've had a client say, but this happened like this before, or this happened before and it totally stunk, or I did this before. And I say, okay, so what'd you learn? Did you learn the lessons from it? Here's the key. Complete the lessons, make sure the lessons have been completed, ask your higher self. And when it comes down to all of this stuff, what's the most basic thing I say is the most important for us to be able to do is to be able to tap into the higher self without the ego, and just simply be able to say, okay, is this my highest truth? Is this going to be the highest and best for me at this time? Seriously, if you just learn how to do that, then you can get through everything else through this really crazy, crazy, exciting time. We are just so not used to doing that anymore, because we have part of this existence, part of the boxes of this existence have been to disempower ourselves, let go of our power, let others tell us what we can and cannot do, what is good, the highest and best for us, and that's not necessarily true. And I've talked about this. I talked about this last week. I've talked about this before in relationships and all that kind of stuff, where many times, like, we think we're doing something to help somebody by saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. We think we're looking out for their best good, but really what we're doing is we're looking out for what we, from our perspective, would be our best good if we made that choice. Not truth, because everybody's path is individual. Everybody's path is unique to themselves, and so everybody, it's time for everyone to learn to ask their own higher self and say, is this for my highest and best? Is this going to help me along on my path to my ultimate soul's purpose with grace and ease, and help me transition into the new world, into the new age, and into the new existence with grace and ease in the best way possible? And the key is to hear yes, and to know it's yes from the highest self and not from the ego. Not that we're not discounting the ego. The ego does have a role, but it's time for the ego to step back from owning this existence and just assimilating as part of the huge, incredible divine beings that we all are, instead of letting one little part. It's like saying, okay, I'm gonna let my right pointer finger totally rule everything I do here in my body. So I have to ask my pointer finger. My pointer finger is going to tell me what I do, no matter what. And I can't think of myself. I can't think, from the whole body perspective. I just have to listen to what the pointer finger says. That's what we're doing with the ego. That's what we've done, but that's just been part of the experience. We wanted to go and take this idea of duality, take this idea of separation to the ultimate, and so we have. But it's, in many cases, it takes me back to my corporate days. This is very much like when you have been, say, you're working for a large company that's been in business for, say, I don't know, 150 years, right? And they got to the certain point and they were owning a market, and they have basically flatlined for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And because they keep on trying to do things the way they always did them. And they say, well, this has always worked for us, so that's how we're going to do it. Well, see, we still have the same numbers, so it's obviously working for us. Yeah, but you have flatlines, you're not growing. You're just sort of staying stagnant. And that's where it goes back to, on the individual level, what I've talked about on how sometimes being comfortable can be the most challenging for us to get past, because it gives us no motivation to move forward. So many times these large companies are saying, okay, we're flatlined. Well, guess what? Now our expenses are changing. We have to put investments in all this new stuff. What are we going to do if we're doing the same thing? And you get this panic going on inside, and a lot of friction and infighting with like managers and all that kind of stuff. And what happens many times is, if, say, the board or the senior management really sees, okay, you know what? We really need to upshift things and to shift into a whole new age. So many times they'll have consultants come in. They will actually maybe sometimes get bought out. Maybe they'll have their board changed completely to infuse this new energy into the way things are done. And then the result is a lot of shifts and changes, makes a lot of people uncomfortable many times, feel displaced and upset and angry and all this egoic reaction and stuff, until things start smoothing out, until and those who are the risk takers will be the ones that say, oh, great, and then they're the ones in the forefront, and then the others start watching and saying, okay, well, all right, we actually are benefiting from this moving forward. That is in many ways what's going on right now in terms of our big shifting into this new age. Except, here's the difference. We're all part of the new board just as much as we were part of the old board, but there's another part of us that's allowed to come in now to make these decisions and shift us into the new age. And these realizations that it's not the board that's all over our heads. Oh, wait a second, it's our responsibility to make these decisions. It's our responsibility to make these changes. And again, many times what's happening is then you have the group who are the risk takers, or the ones who are more diving off the cliff, and they say, woo, I'm going to go, and yay, I'm just going to throw myself right into this, throw away all the old stuff and be done with it. Where you have a good, and that's that bell curve, and you have a good portion of the population going, oh my God, how am I going to do this? No, what if I fail? And what if I totally flop on my face and all this kind of stuff? And then, oh, wait a second. Oh, wait, okay, it's moving out. And there's nothing wrong with any part of this level of this. There's no part of this that's bad. That's the shift. That's the biggest shift for us to make. Releasing duality. We're done with it. We completed it. We completed the lesson to death. And we're shifting into a whole different level of existence, a whole different level of understanding and remembrance, and existing at all these different levels. And it's just amazing. But the key is to remember that nobody can fail. Nope. We are all on exactly the path that we wanted to take, one of the bazillion choices of it. And we're saying, okay, I'm going to complete it after I get all these lessons done. And when we get them done, has no bearing on it. No bearing on whether you're better or worse or whatever. It's just how you are, how you wanted to have the experience. But this is how we're shifting. But the key is, the faster we let go of the old boxes and the old paradigms and say, okay, I got it. Let's move forward. If we take away the boxes of, having to be right and wrong, that's huge. That's duality. Having to have a right and wrong, having to have a right way and a wrong way. That's all from the ego. When you say that's wrong, that comes from the ego. It doesn't come from the higher self. The higher self sees it for the game that it is and says, well, it's just a different path. It's just a different choice. It's a different part of the journey. And the more we focus on coming back to, number one, the realization that we are the divine, that the divine is not outside of us, that it's time for us to stop talking about God and spirit and source as if it's something outside of us completely that we have to appeal to, then the sooner it is we can start stepping fully into our own responsibility and saying, I know the divine is within me. I know I am part of the oneness of source, of spirit, of God. I know I have all of that knowledge and power inside of me. And I know how to handle it with love and in the highest and best way. Then we can take the next step and say, well, then what is there not to love? I am the divine. I'm perfect. And then we can start acting from love. We can start living and existing from love in all aspects of our lives. And then we can start seeing things from a completely different perspective. That's our first step. And this is turning out very differently than what I thought, but it's actually coming through very clearly. That's our first step, is in starting to release all of the old paradigms, releasing all the paradigms that say, I must act from fear, I must be afraid of this, I must be afraid of being punished, I must be afraid of being hurt. Because if we come from the perspective that divine and unconditional love is the highest power in the entire universe, and there is nothing to fear. There is nothing to be afraid of. There is no right and wrong in terms of coming from love, knowing you're part of the oneness, knowing that and respecting and honoring that you are part of the oneness as much as I am, and that we are all right in our journeys. We are all right in what we have chosen to do. That alone will shift us in a huge way, in a very quick way. And the more we can do that, the more smooth and easy and graceful this whole transition into the new age, the new world, the new existence will be. So that is step one, I'm hearing, on this letting go of everything that's behind us and being able to look at things in a new way. We're shifting and we're changing, and now we realize we are the board, and that we are the ones making the decisions, and we are the ones restructuring, and it's all going to be right, and it's all going to be awesome and amazing and fun. And we can complete the lessons from the past, be grateful for them, be grateful for all that we have experienced, tie it all up, look at how it has added depth to us as individuals, as we consider ourselves individuals. Then the next step beyond that is tying into the oneness, knowing the collective lessons and the collective power, and then moving forward into our next game. And on that, I'm going to let you go. Food for thought. We'll talk to you next week. This is Angela with this week's Living the Shift.